As President Trump publicly weighs taking military action in Cuba, the country's president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, is warning that doing so would create a, quote, bloodbath. In an exclusive, Axios reports that Cuba has acquired more than 300 military drones and is discussing using them to potentially attack the Guantanamo Bay U.S. detention center and possibly even parts of the U.S. mainland. White House correspondent for Axios, Marc Caputo, joins me now to discuss his new reporting and walk us through what you've learned, Marc.
Well, you sort of set it up pretty well. Is after the toppling of Maduro in Venezuela, Venezuelan intelligence began telling the United States that around mid 2023, Cuba had begun acquiring drones and had as many as 300, which surprised the United States. And recently, according to the intelligence officials we spoke to, there were intercepts of chatter, of discussions in Cuban military circles of not only buying more drones from Russia, but also discussing possibly attacking these targets. Now, we are told that there's no imminent threat from Cuba, that Cuba was talking about launching these attacks in case hostilities erupted, military hostilities. But nevertheless, the United States, the Trump administration, doesn't like the idea that there's a hostile regime, one that is classified as a state sponsor of terror, one that has a number of Iranian military advisors, as well as Russian military advisors or military personnel, and Chinese ones as well, who are so close to the United States, who have this drone technology, because we've seen in Iran and we've seen in Ukraine what the capabilities of drone technology can be when a smaller force uses it against a larger force.
And is there anything that U.S. officials are doing protectively with respect, to Guantanamo Bay or just this potential threat, even if it's not imminent, as you say?
I'm not aware of any, but I think it's safe to say that since it's something that they're discussing, they are taking those actions. One of the things to remember is that some of the effectiveness of Iran's counterstrikes against the United States took place in Kuwait. There are 6 soldiers, 6 military personnel died there, and that was probably in a drone strike. And one of the things that drones enable smaller militaries to do is to wage asymmetric warfare against larger military forces. There's an interesting aspect of this that we were told by U.S. intelligence, which is that about 5,000 Cuban soldiers had been sort of drafted into Russia's war against Ukraine. And in the process of fighting for Russia and seeing the effectiveness of the Ukrainian drone terror techniques and technology, they came back to Cuba and said, hey, this stuff works. And that sort of helped whet the appetite of the Cuban military officials. I think one of the reasons what you cited a second ago is being said from Diaz-Canel, the president of Cuba, that there could be a bloodbath, but we're not being aggressive about this, is that unlike Iran, the Cubans do not have the military capability to wage war in any sort of significant way. They don't have the number of drones that could be used against the United States in an effective way. And so were they to attack, which again, there's no signs that they would, the United States would probably make very quick work of the Cuban military.
And then just briefly, do we know if anything came of CIA Director John Ratcliffe's visit with Havana officials last week?
No, we do know, or we are told, that he did raise the drone issue and related matters to the Cubans. And there's essentially 2 schools of thought as to why the United States government is doing that. Number one, it's telling the Cuban officials, hey, we're on to you, we can spy on you, we know what you're doing, we know what your capabilities are, so beware. Or the other one is that this is just a pretext for an invasion. I'm not getting the second one as much of an option, but nevertheless, it's one that could be on the table.
All right, Marc Caputo, thank you so much for your reporting. Hope to have you back on.